She goes through the legal process, gets that tenant out of there, and now this dirtbag lawyer wants to, refer her to federal law enforcement. And really, I mean, talk about garbage, okay? This is complete garbage. All right, so I actually have a pretty optimistic article for you, and it's about the story of a landlord who was able to get rid of a non-paying tenant in the very few days when there was the lapse between the old eviction moratorium and the new eviction moratorium. But before I get into that article, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you want to see on this channel. I'm going to work to keep bringing you articles about the eviction moratorium and other news that's of interest to landlords. So, this article, it's coming out of floridabulldog.org, and it says, "No one's a winner in Miami home eviction ordered during brief lull in the pandemic moratorium." Yeah, as everybody knows, the previous old CDC moratorium ended on July the 31st, and then the new moratorium that they put in place, it actually started on, I believe it was August 3rd. And so there was a few days in there where a landlord could have been able to get an eviction done. And in the case in this story, this landlord actually did do that, got the eviction, got those tenants out of there. And then, right afterwards, the new moratorium took place, or, it was put into effect. So this landlord got extremely lucky with very good timing, and it's a good thing. So let's get into it. A Miami woman says her landlord took advantage of a brief pause in the national eviction moratorium to force her out of her home illegally. The facts, if not the legal conclusion, are straightforward, but the year-long saga of property owner Delia Ramos versus tenant Belkis Panate is complicated. Though Ramos succeeded in evicting Panate, there's no clear winner. Ramos is out a lot of money she may never recover, and Panate's lawyer said he'll try to interest federal law enforcement in the case. So, yeah, the lawyer is sitting here and trying to go after this landlord who already is out, thousands and thousands of dollars in lost rent. Now you're trying to continue to punish them even though they have a legal eviction order and we're able to get rid of that tenant. That's a typical lawyer for you. Just a bunch of garbage, Panate and her husband moved into a relative's crowded home Saturday and can only hope the arrangement will be temporary. This is one act of a drama that's playing out across America as politicians, scientists, and judges struggle with the housing fallout of the relentless COVID-19 pandemic. Most of them are trying to strike a balance between safety and economic hardship, but the results are seldom optimal. Well, it should never, ever have been about economic hardship, okay? The whole purpose behind the eviction moratorium, it was from the CDC, was to stop spread of the virus, right? And that's what they said. So why are they talking about economic hardship now? The spread of the virus and economic hardship are two completely different things, okay? So, saying that we want to relieve the burden of the economic burden on these tenants by punishing and, causing economic burden to landlords, I mean, that's wrong. It's simply put wrong, it's unlawful, it's illegal, it's unconstitutional in my opinion. And as well, as it is in the opinion of the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. So unfortunately, they're not going off of that decision yet, but I believe the Supreme Court will find the same. Panate's lawyer, David Winker, said Miami-Dade County Court Judge Elijah Levitt allowed Ramos to take possession of the Panate house on August 2nd, the only recent business day when no moratorium was in effect. An extension ordered by the CDC kicked in on August 3rd. According to Winker, Ramos defied federal law by sweeping into court August 2nd after a year of litigation. Violating the moratorium is punishable by a fine of up to $100,000, 1 year in jail, or both. The CDC order directs the Department of Justice to initiate criminal proceedings as appropriate. So yeah, this, garbage lawyer wants to go after this landlord who followed the law, and the one day that the CDC eviction moratorium was not in place, took possession of the property. So this landlord followed the law, follow what the CDC said, and this lawyer still wants to go send federal law enforcement after him. What a bunch of garbage. This lawyer, he can take himself and go out to the garbage dump where he belongs because he's a piece of crap. Okay? According to Winker, I already read that. The judge did what he was allowed to do, Winker said. I'm actually sympathetic to Mrs. Ramos, but the law is the law. According to Ramos's lawyer, Alejandro Sixto, the tenant took unfair advantage of the moratorium to avoid paying rent. Because Penate has relatives she could move in with, there is no danger of exposure to COVID in an overcrowded homeless shelter, and the COVID guidelines from the CDC are not being violated, he wrote in an email response to questions from the Florida Bulldog. In fact, CDC rules do not protect only the homeless population and do not exempt landlords whose tenants could take shelter with relatives. So, yeah, whatever, I am only saying one thing, okay? The eviction moratorium was not in place when all this occurred. So, even if the eviction moratorium was legal, which I don't believe it is, then they were still in the clear. This landlord is still in the clear. They followed the law. They did everything they were supposed to do. My client is 70 plus years old and relies on the income from this, her only investment property, which was her former home, Sixto wrote. This is not a case of a large business that can accept not receiving rent for over a year and not feel anything. On the tenant side, I'm not going to read that part. Let's go over what he just said here. So this is the typical small mom and pop landlord we're talking about here. We're talking about a 70-year-old lady, okay? This is her only rental property, okay? She depends upon the income from the rental property as part of her retirement, obviously. And she does not have huge emergency reserves, so she cannot rely, she doesn't have this huge cushion to help her last for more than a year without receiving rent. Yet that's exactly what the eviction moratorium had forced her to do. And so she goes through the legal process, gets that tenant out of there, and now this dirtbag lawyer wants to refer her to federal law enforcement. And really, talk about garbage, okay? This is complete garbage. The one who's losing here is her, okay? She is the one out tens of thousands of dollars. In fact, where did it say how much she was actually out? I believe it said it was over $30,000. No, it didn't say it yet. Okay, so it says it down here in the next paragraph. So, for 19 months, Penate and her husband lived in Ramos's 1,932 square foot house in Miami's Westchester neighborhood. The monthly rent was $2,400. Total amount they were behind in rent payments, $33,200. They had to take all their possessions and leave by 9 a.m. last Saturday, August 14th. Now, according to Penate, 5 adults, a teenager, and a 1-year-old child are sharing her sister's 3-bedroom house. Well, how long did you expect this lady to be able to survive out, for 19 months without paying her rent? For real. Okay, she's a 70-year-old lady. She cannot afford this. It doesn't say anything here about you guys applying for rental assistance or anything. Okay? And if you want to talk about how ridiculous this situation is, okay, we're talking about we had 2 adults in the household, okay, and there were the expanded unemployment benefits, there were 3 separate stimulus checks, okay, there was the annual tax refund that people get, there's the expanded child tax credit. There were all these different government stimulus programs coming in, and you didn't pay this landlord any of it? Okay, that's complete garbage, okay? You and your lawyer, you had plenty of money to pay your lawyer, I see. Isn't that a surprise? Oh yeah, you think you can scam over a landlord, you suddenly got enough money to pay a lawyer. And the whole kind of situation is just so frustrating for landlords. Small landlords like this get just absolutely used and abused, and meanwhile you're staying for free for 19 months, okay? That's completely uncalled for, completely ridiculous. And I can't stand reading articles and reading about things like this happening to, people who thought that, hey, I'm going to keep this house that we used to live in, and we're just going to rent it out, and everything's going to be good. And things, they didn't turn out the way we planned, and they're even worse because of government intervention and because of tenants who abuse the system.